What are waves? Well, waves are a way that energy can be transferred or moved from place to place. And you're probably quite familiar with some types of waves already. The first thing you probably think of is waves in water. So whether that's in the ocean, a swimming pool, a bathtub, even a glass of water. If you've ever been in a big crowd at a sporting match in a stadium, you might have participated in a so-called Mexican wave like this one. And in your kitchen at home, you probably have a microwave oven. So waves are responsible for the transfer of energy in those three examples, but also a huge range of other situations. Sound, light, X-rays, Wi-Fi, earthquakes. These things are all very different, but all of these situations involve the transfer of energy from one place to another in the form of a wave. So those are some examples of waves, but what is a wave? Alright, this explanation might sound a bit strange, but bear with me. We've got a ball that's hanging down from a spring. Now gravity's pulling the ball downwards, and the spring is pulling the ball back upwards. Now right now these two forces are balanced. They're the same, so the ball isn't moving anywhere. If you were to lift the ball up a bit, gravity would pull it back down, and if you were to pull the ball down a little bit, the spring would pull it back up. But right now the ball is hanging from the spring and it's not moving, so we could say that it's at rest. Now the name that we give to the position that the ball is in here is called its equilibrium position. And it's called this because the forces that are acting on it, gravity pulling down and the spring pulling back up, they're equal. So we call it equilibrium. Now if we were to push the ball up or down, we'd disturb that equilibrium and the ball's going to start to bounce. We call this type of repeating back and forth motion an oscillation. Just try and remember that key term. So the ball is moving or oscillating back and forth about its equilibrium position. Okay, that looks great, right? But you're probably thinking, what the heck has a ball bouncing on the end of a spring got to do with waves? Well, what if there was more than one ball, each on its own spring and the two balls were connected? Right now they're both at rest or equilibrium. But if we were to disturb the ball on the left, it will start to bounce and it will cause the connected ball to start moving as well. The two balls are now oscillating. In fact, they're moving exactly the same way. It's just that the one on the right is kind of following the one on the left. You could say that they're slightly out of phase, that one is a bit ahead of the other. But I don't think two's enough. So what if there was 5 or 10 or 1,000,000 of the balls, all with their own spring and all connected in a line? If we start that first ball bouncing by moving it from its equilibrium, it passes that movement or energy onto each of the other balls. And you can probably see how this oscillating movement of lots of balls is starting to look a little bit more like a wave. So now with this long chain of balls connected together, the wave starts to look much clearer. If they were all at rest, the balls would be sitting still along that red equilibrium line. But a disturbance to the first ball on the left is sent from left to right along the chain. You can see that the wave itself is moving from left to right across the screen. However, the wave was formed by moving the ball on the left up and down. Another very important thing to note is that although the balls are oscillating up and down, they are never actually changing position. They're not being moved anywhere. And this is a very important feature of all waves, that they transfer energy but not matter. Waves can be made in simple objects too, like a piece of rope. A single wave like this one is called a pulse. The pulse is created by a disturbance in the rope on the left-hand side, and it moves that energy from left to right. Rather than a single pulse in the rope, a repeated up and down disturbance, or an oscillation, creates a wave. Just like with the pulse, and also with the balls that were on the springs, the disturbance to the medium is up and down, but the direction of the wave is from left to right. Waves like this are called transverse waves. The key characteristic of transverse waves is that the movement of the medium is perpendicular, it's at a 90-degree angle to the direction that the wave is traveling. The wave on the screen is moving from left to right, and it's caused by the up and down movement of the medium. Transverse waves like this can be found on all stringed instruments. When one end of the string is plucked, that downward disturbance creates a wave that moves along the string. Now usually this vibration is actually way too fast to be able to see, but it's fairly clear if you see it in slow motion. And whatever it is that this guy's doing with those ropes is also a perfect example of a transverse wave. You can see that his arms are moving up and down, and that's creating a wave that's moving away from his body, from left to right. Those two examples are fairly simple waves. They're traveling through a one-dimensional object. But if we took a simple transverse wave like that, like in this blue string that's on the screen, and we stretched it out both into the screen and out towards you, what would it look like? Well, that single line would kind of form a sheet, but you can see from the animation on the screen how a wave can also travel through a two-dimensional medium like this. In fact, if you imagine holding out a bed sheet and shaking your arms up and down, you'd produce a wave just like this. And this is exactly what waves in the ocean are like. A disturbance in the water, usually wind blowing across the surface, shifts the water from its resting equilibrium position and creates waves that travel across the ocean carrying energy. The waves in this animation are quite complex, but if you look at any of those particles closely, you'll see that they're only ever moving up and down. None of the particles are moving away from their position. This is always the case for waves. Particles in the medium will oscillate back and forth, but will return to their resting position. The wave is moving energy, not moving the particles. Alright, I promise this is the final example with the balls on springs. In the previous example with them, a wave was made by disturbing the ball furthest to the left. This made a wave that moved from left to right. If we disturb the ball furthest to the right, a wave would move from right to left. What do you think will happen if we disturb the balls in the middle of the chain? If you predicted that waves would travel away from the disturbance in both directions, you're absolutely correct. Waves will transfer energy in every direction through a medium. And you would have seen this happen many times. A great example is in water. A drop of water into a bucket or an object thrown into a swimming pool will create ripples or waves that travel outwards in all directions from the disturbance in the water. So waves don't necessarily travel along just a single path from where they are started. They can spread out in multiple, or in fact in every direction. So what are waves? A wave is a disturbance that travels through a medium and transports energy from one location to another without transporting matter.